If you are a woman, and you are either approaching state pension age or you have already reached it, there is a number sitting inside the government's own system with your name on it. And that number is almost certainly smaller than it should be. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you missed a deadline that was clearly explained to you, but because of the way this country treated women's working lives for decades, and because the one organization that knows exactly what your number is and exactly what can be done about it has absolutely no obligation to tell you any of it. By the end of this video, you will know why your state pension may be lower than you were ever told to expect. You will know the specific years of your life that are most likely behind the gap. You will know what the actual deadline is and why it matters more than almost any financial date in your life right now. And you will know the exact steps to take this week to find out where you stand before it is too late to do anything about it. Because that is the part that does not get said clearly enough. There is a deadline, and once it passes, the gap in your pension becomes permanent. No appeal, no second chance, no form you can fill in afterwards to put it right. I am James Hartley, and I want to make sure you're not one of the women who finds that out too late. Before I go a single sentence further, do me a quick favor and hit subscribe and turn on the bell. The rules around the state pension are shifting faster right now than they have in years. And when they shift, nobody from the DWP rings to explain what it means for your household. What I do on this channel is take these changes the moment they land, pull them apart in plain English, and get the piece that actually matters to you into your hands while there is still time to act. Hit subscribe and let us get properly into this. Let me start with the root of the problem, because unless you understand where the gap comes from, the rest of this will not land the way it needs to. Your state pension is built on something called national insurance contributions. For every year of your working life, where you either paid national insurance or received a credit for it, you build up what is called a qualifying year. The full new state pension, which is currently just over £220 a week, requires 35 qualifying years to receive in full. That sounds straightforward, and for a man who worked full-time from his early 20s straight through to retirement with no interruptions, it more or less was. Women took time out of work to raise children. They stepped back to care for aging parents. They worked part-time because the family needed someone at home, and the person who did that was almost always the woman. They took lower-paid jobs that sometimes fell just below the threshold where national insurance contributions kicked in. And for years, the system simply did not count any of that. The caring years, the part-time years, the years spent holding a family together while a husband's career continued, uninterrupted. None of it built up qualifying years in the way that a standard salary did. So women arrived at pension age with gaps in their records, sometimes 5 years missing, sometimes 10, sometimes more. And a pension that reflected not the life they had actually lived, but the narrow version of working life the system was designed to reward. Here is the part that makes this particularly painful. The government has known about this for a very long time. And rather than writing to every affected woman and explaining what had happened and what could be done about it, the system simply sat there, quiet, waiting for someone to ask. Most women never knew to ask, which is exactly why the gap has gone unclosed for so many of them for so long. I want to put a real figure on this, because until you see the numbers, it is easy to underestimate what is at stake here. The full new state pension is currently around £222 a week. If you have 35 qualifying years, that is what you receive. But for every year below 35, your pension is reduced proportionally. Each missing qualifying year costs you roughly £6.30 a week in pension. That does not sound enormous on its own, but carry it forward across a retirement of 20 years or more, and that single missing year costs you somewhere in the region of £6,500 in total pension income. Now think about a woman with 5 missing years. That is over £30,000 of pension income that quietly disappears across her retirement. Not taken from her dramatically, not announced in a letter, just absent, week after week, for the rest of her life. And the cruel thing is that in many cases, those missing years can be filled in. The government allows people to go back and pay voluntary national insurance contributions to plug the gaps in their record. The cost of buying back a missing year is currently a few £100s. The return on that purchase, spread across a full retirement, can be many thousands. There are very few financial decisions in retirement where the numbers work out that cleanly in your favor. And yet most of the women it applies to have never been told this option even exists. Now let me tell you specifically which years of your life are most likely behind the shortfall, because this is where most women get their answer. The first is the child-raising years. If you left the workforce to care for children before 2010, those years may not have been credited to your national insurance record in the way they would be today. The system of national insurance credits attached to child benefit was improved over time, but the earlier rules left gaps that many women who raised children in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are still carrying now. If you claimed child benefit in your own name during those years, you may have received credits. If your partner claimed it instead, which was common, you may not have. And simply not knowing that distinction could be costing you thousands of pounds every single year of your retirement. The second set of years that creates gaps is the part-time working years. If your earnings in any given year fell below what is called the lower earnings limit, your employment did not generate a national insurance contribution for that year. For someone working school hours to fit around children, or taking reduced hours to care for an elderly parent, it was entirely possible to work for years without a single one of those years counting toward your pension. You were not idle. You were not absent from the economy. You were simply doing work that the contribution rules did not reward. The third and most recent source of gaps is the transition to the new state pension in 2016. The system changed significantly that year, and for a number of women, the way their existing record was carried across into the new system produced a lower starting figure than they had expected or been led to believe they would receive. Some of those women have grounds to have their records reviewed. But again, nobody sent them a letter explaining that. Now I need to talk about the deadline, because this is the part of this video that I most need you to carry away with you. For a long time, the rules around voluntary national insurance contributions only allowed you to go back and fill in gaps from the past 6 years. Anything older than that was simply out of reach, gone. But a temporary extension was put in place that allows people to go further back and fill in gaps going all the way to 2006. That extension was not put there forever. It has a closing date, and when that date arrives, the extended window closes and the 6-year limit returns. Any gaps older than 6 years become permanent. You need to check right now what that current deadline is. Not approximately. Not when you get round to it. Now. Because I have seen too many people assume they have plenty of time, put it off, and then find out the window had already closed. I will put the link to the government's own pension checking service in the description below this video. That is the starting point. That is where you find your actual record, your actual qualifying years, and the actual gaps that can still be filled. The number you find there is the true picture of where you stand, not what you assumed, not what someone told you years ago. The real number. And once you have it, you can make a real decision about what to do with the time that is still available. The first thing to do is get your national insurance record. You can do this through the government's Check Your State Pension service on gov.uk. It will show you your current qualifying years, your projected pension, and the gaps in your record. You do not need an accountant or a financial advisor to do this. It is a straightforward online check, and it is free. The second thing is to look at the gaps the record shows and work out which years can still be filled within the current rules. The service itself will often tell you which gaps are eligible and give you an estimate of the cost to fill them. The third thing is to do the arithmetic honestly. For each missing year you are considering buying back, look at what it adds to your weekly pension and multiply that by the number of years you expect to receive it. For most women doing this check, the return on filling even 1 or 2 years is substantial enough that it becomes one of the most straightforward financial decisions of their retirement. And the fourth thing, which I cannot stress strongly enough, is to do this now rather than later. Not because I am trying to frighten you into action, but because the deadline for filling older gaps is real, and the regret of missing it by a matter of weeks is a very hard thing to live with when you understand what it costs you over the years that follow. If any of this feels complicated, or you're not confident doing it alone, Age UK and Citizens Advice both offer free help with exactly this kind of check. They will sit with you and go through your record properly without charging you a penny, and without any interest in anything other than getting your answer right. If you are a woman in your late 50s or your 60s right now, you are in the group this affects most directly. Your working life almost certainly included some combination of the years I described. Years out for children, years part-time for family reasons, years of caring that the contribution system did not count. And if you are approaching state pension age rather than already receiving it, you are in the best possible position, because you still have time to act before the gaps become permanent. But even if you are already receiving your state pension, and you think this does not apply to you, it is worth knowing that some women who reached pension age and were given incorrect forecasts have since had their records reviewed and their payments corrected. It is not universal, and it depends on your circumstances. But it is another reason that checking your record is worth a few minutes of your time, even if you assumed everything was already settled. The DWP knows exactly whose record has gaps. It knows which women have missing years. It knows which of those gaps could be filled and what filling them would be worth. That information is sitting inside a government database right now, with your name attached to it. And there is no law, no rule, no policy that requires them to contact you and explain it. They will pay you whatever your record currently shows, week after week, for the rest of your life, without ever once prompting you to check whether it is correct. That is not a conspiracy. It is simply how the system is built. It pays out what the record shows, and it leaves the checking to you. Which means the only thing standing between you and a higher pension for the rest of your retirement is knowing that the check exists and taking the 20 minutes to do it. You now know that. Most of the women watching this today did not know it an hour ago. And that knowledge, acted on this week while the window is still open, is worth more than almost anything else you could do for your financial future right now. Check your record, look at your gaps, do the numbers. And if in any doubt at all, get free help from Age UK or Citizens Advice before the deadline closes. If this has been useful to you, please share it with every woman you know who is in their 50s or 60s, because they almost certainly have not heard a word of this, and it could change what they receive for the rest of their lives. Hit subscribe and stay close. I am James Hartley, and I will see you in the next video.